5 months have passed since Manipur has caught in the cycle of ethnic violence. Since then, more than 200 people have been killed and over 1,200 left injured, with over 50,000 forced to abandon their homes. But the challenge of restoring law and order continues to loom large, with no solution in sight. Before we delve into the details of the reason behind the ongoing volatile situation in the state, let me provide you with an overview of the current situation. In a fresh round of violence in Manipur's Imphal, over 60 people, including students and policemen, were severely injured. While the crowd, which included students, allegedly assaulted a policeman and took away his weapon, attacked government offices and the house of a political leader, set a police gypsy on fire, and breached barricades, thereby further deteriorating the law and order situation in the state, the protesters were also subjected to force with pellets fired at them. In an earlier incident that was reported on the 21st of September, a large gathering of locals armed with sticks, slingshots had gathered outside police stations across 5 districts in Imphal Valley. Following the violence, the curfew, which had previously been relaxed and lifted, was once again imposed in the valley, and the mobile services, which were actually restored on Saturday after almost 4.5 months, were suspended for over 5 days once again. But these incidents of violence, as you may have observed, do not involve the clashes between the two communities, that is the hill-based Kukis and the valley-based Meiteis. In fact, Manipur is now witnessing a recent shift, with the Meiteis in the valley now turning against their own police, accusing them of bias and unfair treatment. So why are the Meiteis protesting? Last week, the protest that turned violent was due to a mob protesting against the arrest of 5 Meitei men who were allegedly caught roaming around in police uniforms with sophisticated weaponry including insats rifles and self-loading rifles, which is commonly known as the SLR, on the 16th of September. The more recent protest was due to police's inaction in the alleged abduction and murder of 2 Meitei teenagers from the valley who had in fact gone missing in July. In the first instance, 5 imposters were taken into custody by the police, something that the locals did not approve of and started a violent protest. These people belonged to the Meitei community. Following their arrest, an armed mob stormed at the Porumpat police station, which falls under the Imphal East in the valley, where the men were detained, demanding that they be released. The Meera Paibis, who are the women in the valley, also called for a 48-hour bandh and threatened the police of setting Imphal afire if these men are not released and if their demands are not met. Among the men who were arrested were a pork seller, an office assistant at an e-commerce company, a helper in the departmental store, a caretaker of a drug rehabilitation center, and most interestingly, a person who was identified by the police as a trained but dormant People's Liberation Front operative, all of whom eventually got bail. In the other protest that turned violent recently, the mob was protesting against the police's inaction in the alleged abduction and murder of 2 teenagers who, like I said, had gone missing from their homes on 6th of July. These 2 teenagers had in fact gotten outside their home on the pretext of going to their tuition. While the girl had told her father that she's going out for tuition, the boy had told his father that he's going for a football match. A few days later, after the mobile internet was restored in Manipur, photos of these 2 Meitei students who went missing on 6th July appeared, and these photos were circulated all over social media. One of the photos show that the students sitting in the grassy compound of what appears to be a makeshift jungle camp of an armed group. 2 men with guns stand behind them, and in the next photo, their bodies are seen slumped on the ground. Soon after they had gone missing, their families had approached the police multiple times as well as searched for the leads themselves to find their children. However, each time they were turned away by the police, asking for them to wait for the situation to get normal. While we were on the ground, we had met the parents, and they told me that their phone of the boy had switched on at a location which was somewhere around a Kuki village, and they had also shared this input with the police. But the police refused to take any action at that moment, saying that it is not safe for them to cross over to the Kuki area. Soon after their photos went viral, the Manipur government said that the case had already been handed over to the Central Bureau of Investigation and is being probed rigorously by them. However, the parents were not satisfied. Speaking to us, they told us that the police just registered an FIR and sat over it doing nothing. In fact, they told them that they cannot cross over to the Kuki area for any sort of investigation. This case has sparked controversy with Meiteis in Imphal, accusing the police of not acting against the Kukis and demanding justice for the family of these teenagers. These protests by the Meiteis that are now being carried out at police stations are against the establishment, the security forces, and the police themselves. They accuse the police of not arresting any Kukis in cases filed against them, but instead accuse them of cracking down on Meiteis. Dealing with these incidents on a daily basis has become a significant challenge for the police, who are already overburdened with numerous cases pending investigation in the state of Manipur since 3rd of May. Amid such large-scale violence, the police registered over 6,500 cases in the last 4.5 months. Only 280 arrests have been made in these cases till now. Investigations in most of these cases have made no headway, hampered by the resistance from the local population. And this is the situation on both sides. In the sides of the Kuki, that the areas including Churachandpur, More, and as well as the valley where the Meitei population is concentrated. Such is the situation that it is difficult to arrest and produce anyone in courts. If the police makes any arrest, a crowd from the person's community, whether it is Kuki or Meitei, gathers and corners the police. Both in the valley and hill regions, community-led armed crowds often intervene during arrests, compelling the police to release the detainees. In some instances, these mobs even appear outside courtrooms or judges' residences during the accused's appearances. Even the CBI teams that comprise of 106 officers, that include also senior rank officers such as the Special Director, Joint Director, who are currently stationed in Imphal Valley to investigate the 27 cases that were handed over to them, are facing significant challenges in moving around owing to these sporadic protests and blockades by the locals. In one such instance, and I would like to share this with you, when the team went to the Manipur Police Training Center in Imphal East last month, from where mobs had looted weapons including SLRs, INSAS, LMGs, .303 rifles, carbines, as well as grenades, tear gas shells, and thousands and lakhs of ammunition on 27th May, they were surrounded by people and forced to return. The team could not do any investigation in that area or record any statements. The police are providing security to the CBI teams to ensure that the work is carried out smoothly, but it remains a big challenge for them as well. Going by police records, Manipur has recorded 74 murders, 24 abductions, 27 missing individuals, 30 instances of arms looting, and 11 attacks on women and children, including 3 sexual assault cases. Arson takes the lead with a staggering 5,107 cases, reflecting widespread destruction from burnt homes and vandalized properties and leveled structures. However, these registered cases fail to capture the full extent of the violence in Manipur, even months after the conflict. Thousands of zero FIRs scattered across all 16 districts of Manipur, documenting murders, the missing, and more are yet to be processed. These FIRs were filed in jurisdictions that are distant from the actual crime scenes. As a result of large-scale migration of tribal Kukis from the Meitei-dominated Imphal Valley and of the Meiteis from the Kuki-dominated hill districts, these FIRs are staggered all across districts in Imphal. In fact, I'll give you just one instance. 2,700 such FIRs have been filed only in the district of Churachandpur, which falls in the Kuki-dominated hill district. Now such FIRs remain unattended since the police are not able to physically transfer them to the appropriate police stations due to these blockades that are imposed by locals on both sides. The investigation will start only and only after these FIRs reach the designated police stations. The police in Manipur told me that they encounter formidable challenges in transferring these crucial documents, which includes these FIRs, like I mentioned, between their headquarters in Imphal and the Kuki-dominated hill district. Officers say that Meitei matriarchs known as these Meiteis, who have played a major role in obstructing investigations, like they check vehicles, they will stop even police vans to check what is being transported from a Meitei area to a Kuki area, have assumed this vigilante role of conducting checks of police vehicles along Imphal and Churachandpur highway. And in fact, they destroy certain documents in which they feel should not go to the other side. If Meiteis discover files with Churachandpur written on them, they burn them, which is why they are now resorting to different ways of transporting these files, the police told me. Such is the case that it is taking police to send one FIR from, say, a police station in Imphal East to Kuki-dominated More in the hills, because the locals are not allowing these files to be moved between these areas. The police are now employing human couriers, essentially Muslims who are not part of this conflict, to ferry across these FIRs. It has almost been 5 months since the violence began in Manipur on 3rd of May, but the clashes between the two communities, that is the Kuki, who are in the hills, and the Meiteis, who dominate the valley, continue, with mobs armed with sophisticated weapons wreaking havoc on the streets of Manipur. Violence escalated following a solidarity march by the All Tribal Students Union Manipur to protect the interest of the tribals against the Meiteis' demand for scheduled tribe status. The fallout of the violence, however, has not just been a fractured state with both communities facing its brunt, but a completely divided police force that has failed to restore any normalcy. Instead, it appears to be working against it. In early May, more than 1,500 Meitei and Kuki policemen went missing from duty, only for some to reappear in police stations close to their homes days later. The Kuki officers assigned to the Meitei-dominated Imphal Valley retreated to the hills, while Meitei officers stationed in Kuki areas refused to return, exacerbating the divide further. Some officers went on leave, others were reposted closer to home, and 50 still remain missing. Ethnic divisions have also affected how cases related to the violence are being handled in the state. Complaints from Kukis about their ravaged villages in the valley were allegedly not registered in Imphal, where it is Meitei dominated, and conversely, cases filed by Meiteis regarding losses in Kuki dominated areas were purportedly left unaddressed there. The rift has also led to the accusations that police are now colluding with miscreants from their own communities. This has also posed a very significant challenge, which is disarmament of the locals, which remains a big problem in Manipur. Over 4.5 months have passed since more than 200 AK-47s, 406 carbines, over 500 INSAS rifles, 250 machine guns, and over 6.5 lakh rounds of ammunition were looted from police armories and stations, primarily in the Meitei-dominated Imphal Valley. There have been no substantial recoveries, leaving a significant arsenal in the hands of locals. That is actually leading to incidents of firing that we hear on the fringes every now and then. According to police data, of the 5,668 stolen sophisticated automatic weapons, only around 1,331 were recovered so far, and the rest are being openly used by the civilians to carry out these killings. Even as the center has deployed thousands of additional security forces, including the army, the spell of violence remains to be contained. Rather than actively going against the armed insurgents from both sides, security forces are focused on maintenance of peace, like what a UN peacekeeping operation would do. But why is it that the police and the security forces together have not been able to achieve this disarmament, have been able to convince people, or in fact carry out these operations forcefully to recover these weapons? According to sources in the security establishment, the failure to resolve the issue stems from a combination of factors, including lack of political will, number one, second, restrained forces, and third, which is also very important and something that I just discussed, a divided police force within the state. A significant obstacle to disarmament effort is growing support of civilian in Meitei-dominated Imphal Valley for prescribed militant groups. Compounding the challenge, the army and the Assam Rifles lack the legal framework to enter most of these villages in the Imphal Valley for operations, as they are not classified as disturbed areas since the lifting of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act there. In fact, they have been saying, a lot of Assam Rifles people, officers that we met, that because of these areas being denotified, they have not been able to carry out any joint operations in these areas, because to carry out an operation in these areas, you require the support of the local police, and if the area is denotified, then the Assam Rifles or any other force that is going inside the village would require warrants. Most attacks, the sources said, are being launched by the Meitei insurgent groups from denotified areas that are no longer considered disturbed. Of the 92 police stations in Manipur, the AFSPA has been removed from 19 police stations across 7 districts, most of whom are in the valley. The disturbed areas declaration under the AFSPA was in effect since 2004. But in April 2022, the notification was lifted from 15 police stations due to improvements in law and order. Since violence erupted in Manipur, the state government's response also has been very limited to measures such as internet shutdowns, curfews, and meetings with these groups representing the two communities. The internet shutdown is turning ineffective as locals use alternative means of communication such as Chinese walkie-talkies and phone calls, which you would see every now and then when you are traveling around on the ground, that most of these people that you see manning roads and highways are carrying around these walkie-talkies, small handsets, and coordinating all movements of army, of Assam Rifles, of local police, giving tip-offs to each other about who is going where. So you'd find these Chinese walkie-talkies with most people in the valley and even in the hills. Additionally, curfews fail to restrict the movement of people in the foothills where incidents of violence are frequently reported. Despite the imposition of Section 144 of the CRPC, which restricts the assembly of people, hundreds and hundreds of Meitei women gather at the entry points of villages and highways. In fact, it is a very, very common sight if anybody goes to Manipur, that whenever your vehicle passes through any important highway, or if it is crossing over to the hills, you would see these blockades, these barricades by these women who would check your vehicle. They will check your Aadhaar card, they will check your registration certificate, and in fact also check your entire vehicle to make sure that you're not carrying anything across to the hills. So it's a very, very common sight. It is not the police that is checking your vehicles or the Assam Rifles or forces posted there who are checking your vehicles as frequently as the locals do. So they coordinate with each other and are often first to assemble whenever there is any movement of any forces. With fresh incidents of violence being reported from different parts on a daily basis, the state is being accused of being hand in glove with the Meiteis for political gains and to target the Kuki minority. According to the 2011 census, the Meitei constitute approximately 53% of the Manipur's population of 2.8 million, making them the largest community in the state. In contrast, the Kukis, who are Christians, account for 28%, while the Nagas make up for the 21% of Manipur's population. The majority of Meiteis reside in the Imphal Valley, which comprises just 10% of the state's land, but it is the most developed region in the state. The remaining 90% of the land where Kukis and Nagas reside fall under the hill districts that do not have facilities such as good schools or major hospitals. The lack of trust in the state and its forces is proving to be a significant hurdle in the process of disarming these civilians. In a society deeply divided and marked by a lack of trust, civilians are now reluctant to even rely on the state or its forces to maintain law and order. Instead, they prefer to take matters in their own hands, making it challenging for the state and its forces to disarm these individuals. These weapons have also become a fixed deposit for these civilians. Many tell us that they have just kept these weapons with them so that they can defend their own selves. Once the war, which they say, the situation in Manipur right now, they have declared it as a civil war, and they say that once this war is over, then probably we will be returning these weapons. But till then, these weapons will remain with us because we need to defend our own selves. But months after the police armories were looted in Manipur, the state government on 22nd September called for all illegal weapons held by any person or any group to be surrendered within 15 days, adding that those who don't do it will be dealt with severely. Now, this is the first statement that has come in so many months where the state government has so emphatically stated that they want all the civilians who have taken these weapons to surrender them. Now, the state has also said that they are willing to take a considerate view for the people who surrender such illegal weapons within 15 days, which means that there won't be any case, any FIR under Arms Act or any other act registered against them. In fact, once they surrender the weapon, they'll be allowed to go scot-free. That is what they are saying. The government is saying that they are going to take a considerate view of the people who return it, but people who still don't return it, then they'll have to face the music. And at the end of this time frame, security forces, both of the center and the state, will undertake search operations all over the state to recover such weapons. Another challenge that Manipur faces is that both the Kukis and Meiteis are using services of recycled cadres of separatist, secessionist and militant outfits who were previously apprehended, or the ones who had surrendered, or the ones who deserted militancy. So these people are actually being trained by these militants, and this is what the security sources in the security establishment have told us, that these village defense volunteers are actually being trained by these surrendered militant outfits. Sources said that the violence in the state has resulted in resurfacing of these valley-based insurgent groups who had in the past years gone into hiding. Sources have credible inputs of Meiteis civilians being trained in using these weapons that were stolen by these outfits. These are leaders that had become completely irrelevant, but now they have regrouped themselves. These VBIGs, that is the valley-based insurgent groups who were earlier pushed from Manipur, have now resurfaced in the state. According to sources in the security establishment, these groups were staying put in the jungles of Myanmar at the border, but have now returned for their community. They are giving them training, they are telling them how to load weapons, fire them, and this is what has been happening in the jungles of Manipur. According to sources, the front and other offshoots like the People's Liberation Front, People's Revolutionary Party of Kanglaipak, KCP, KYKL and others, these are the groups that are actually resurfacing in Manipur. And all of them are referred to by the security forces as valley-based insurgent groups. According to sources, approximately 200 to 250 of these cadres are said to have been infiltrated into Manipur, and going by intelligence reports, lot of them who were lying dormant in the jungles have also started their operations once more. The return of militants is likely to have a major security implication in this situation, in fact, that we are seeing in Manipur right now. And that is what concerns the security establishment the most. Despite such a volatile situation in Manipur, it appears that the state government is determined to restore the situation, but security alone is unlikely to bridge the divide between the two communities, which has assumed a degree of permanency. There is a lot that is left to be done to start a dialogue between the two communities. For now, maintenance of law and order remains the biggest challenge in the state. We have done extensive coverage from Manipur from the ground. In fact, I have myself visited the state 3 times, and many of our terrific reporters, including Maushmi Das Gupta, Sonal Matharu, Karishma Hasnat, have been there multiple times. Please do log on to ThePrint.in to read our extensive coverage from the state of Manipur since 3rd of May, since the clashes began. In fact, we will keep bringing you these stories from the ground. Please stay tuned.